Well, it is UFC 279 time. The predictions for it, anyways. Fight card coming up this Saturday. Is this the worst UFC pay per view in a long time? Maybe. It's not because the fights are going to be particularly bad, to be honest. Because, for example, I think Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez is actually a really fun fight. I think that Irene Aldana and Macy Chiasson, while sloppy, will be fairly fun. I think the Leech and Tony Ferguson could be fun. Kind of depends on how just shot Ferguson is. And, Cutelaba and Johnny Walker is also a potentially fun fight. But what I would describe this card as lacking is any kind of consequence, relevance, shifting of the tides. These are all ways, I guess, of putting it, because you don't have a title fight on the card. You don't have a number one contenders fight on the card. I guess you could say Nate Diaz versus Chimaev is a number one contenders fight, because if Chimaev wins, and spoiler, I am picking him to win, he's going to get a title shot, so you could be like, well, this is his number one contender moment. No, the number one contender moment was beating Gilbert Burns. This is a chance to punish Nate Diaz on the way out the door, a chance to transfer a little bit of extra hype onto Chimaev, build him into a bigger star, but not necessarily a more relevant fighter in the main event. And then, you kind of have a similar deal with Ferguson and Leech, because what does beating Ferguson mean for the Leech? What does Ferguson winning mean? These are legitimately massive questions coming out of this, and as a result, there's no real relevance to a title picture anywhere outside of, I guess, 145 with the Danielle Wolf versus Norma Dumont fight, but that's on the undercard. That's not even on the main card. You got to pay the pay-per-view price for it, so that's also kind of weak. Interesting enough, UFC 278 in Utah, we actually have fighter pay rolls from that, so that's nice. Verified, solid numbers. Nothing surprising. I believe someone did the math and came up with about 1.5 million for total fighter pay. Let's have a quick gamble here. You'll hear some typing and some clickety clacking in the background as I come up with the figures. 198, 400. Well, it's going to be more than 1.5 million. So whoever came up with that math was mistaken. Mm, 24, 10, 32, 14, 12, 24, 20, and 10. About 2.5 million, actually. So maybe they were just off. Maybe they just hit the wrong button when they said 1.5 million. 2.5 million, and it was apparently about a $4 million gate. And then you, of course, got sponsorship on top of that, as well as the ESPN actual pay-per-view deal, which, of course, is incredibly profitable for the UFC, because they don't even have to worry about buys on that largely at this point, because it's a flat rate. So all of that going in there, and there's your portion going to the fighters in terms of pay. The only thing interesting, I guess, was that I thought that we weren't getting any more 10-10 contracts off Dana White Contender Series, but apparently Victor Altamirano is on, and Daniel Lacerda, aka Daniel Da Silva, are both on 10-10 contracts still. So those are still a thing. So is AJ Fletcher, actually. So those are still a thing. I'm trying to remember if those guys were on Dana White Contender Series before or after they said that was going to be a thing of the past, that they were moving the ceiling up to 12-12. I don't know, but they were on 10-10 for this fight, anyways. So still out there. That's pretty much, I think, the lowest pay you're going to see, and the biggest earner on the card was Kamaru Usman. Not surprising. $500,000 for him. And Other than him, other than champions, the biggest pay flat pay outside of the main event was Jose Aldo. Also not surprising, 400,000. So there you go. There's some numbers for you ahead if you're into the whole crunching the numbers of the UFC. I'll put a link in the description of the episode to the payouts if you want to go in deep detail. Like I said, there's nothing like groundbreaking here or stunning to talk about. Just interesting. One of those few times where we actually get to see the fighter payroll. Oh, and there's also the site fee that undoubtedly got paid big time by Utah because their tourism bureau was all over the fight card. So you know the Utah government paid a nice hefty sum to get that event. So let's get into UFC 279 here. Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz. Main event. Huge odds, betting odds here. Minus 1,200 for Chimaev. Plus 725 for Nate Diaz. And I can't really argue at all, honestly. I mean, this is kind of the weird one where, like, Diaz does seem very checked out. And, I mean, a lot of people are throwing out, like, ideas of, like, he'll get himself disqualified by kicking Chimaev in the balls. Or he'll just come out and tap out. I don't honestly think any of that is going to happen. But, like, I also don't think we're going to get an interesting fight. Because there may have been a time when this would be an interesting fight. It's not now. Nate Diaz at welterweight, in general, doesn't have the physicality to compete. And that was when he was in his prime. Like, it's what always comes up when, like, people are talking about trying to enhance the reputation and the obscenities of Conor McGregor's win over Nate Diaz as they try to exaggerate his size. And the truth is that at 170, Nate Diaz has had remarkably little success. If we look back to the first time he went up in weight, it was to fight Rory Markham, which he did win, and then he also beat Marcus Davis, but then lost to Stun Gun Kim and Roy McDonald in fights that, if you haven't seen a man fly, you should go check out because they just manhandle him. Went back down to 155 for a while, came up to 170 for the Conor fights. I think the Pettis fight was at 170. It was. And then losses to George Masvidal by stoppage and, of course, by Leon Edwards by decision. In a fight where he hurt Evans at the end, or Edwards at the end. Pardon me, not Evans. And people kind of, I don't know, romanticize that fight to an essential degree that, like, oh, no, he's found something. No, he really hasn't. He really never has had anything at 170. This looks like the Rory McDonald fight. This looks like the Stun Gun Kim fight in a lot of ways. Chimaev has got a pretty good chin. He can take a punch. He's comfortable in a firefight. He's comfortable being aggressive, of course, coming forward, and Nate's not going to give him any power or any reason not to come forward or any offensive wrestling threat. Chimaev should probably take him down and pound him out. I would say second and third round. I guess Diaz probably still has the durability to get out of the first. But that's about it, really. You know, I'm how much of a believer in Chimaev am I? Somewhere in the middle, I guess, because there are, like, people that believe that, like, he's really not any good, and I'm definitely not in that camp. And there are people that are treating him like he's the next coming of God in the welterweight division, and I'm not quite there. So, you know, in the middle ground. But yeah, Nate Diaz probably going to get ripped apart here, and it's going to be kind of sad, honestly. It's a fight that shouldn't be happening. Even for business reasons. Because here's the thing. If you wanted to desperately punish Nate Diaz, and it's clear the UFC does, because, you know, he's leaving them, and, you know, and to be clear, that's part of the promotion game. As people leave your promotion, you're not exactly going to be interested in promoting them or allowing them to gain a bigger star. You want to knock that down. You want to take their star power and put it on someone else. And that's kind of the thing is, I don't think Chimaev really gets anything out of winning this, is why I don't like this fight. Like, sure, it's the most surefire way at 170 And yes, Nate did, air quotes, ask for this fight as a way of getting out of his contract. But I still would have gone a different route. I still would have tried to make another star because I don't think actually anything really comes out of this for Chimaev. And I don't think he needs anything more. Like like I said, he's a guy heading towards a title shot. But I don't know. Like are you trying to win over Diaz fans and make them into Chimaev fans? Because if they're not already, I don't think anything will. Like I think you're looking at like the hardest of hardcore Diaz fans who are still cheering for Nate and believing that he's good. And the transfer over has nothing to do with fighting. It has nothing to do with Chimaev. It's to do with the Nate Diaz aura, the Nate Diaz brand, for lack of a better term. Anyways, he'll probably go and fight Jake Paul after this. I believe that is largely what the Paul camp and the Diaz camp are talking about. And I think Nate is also going to try to become a fight promoter, which will be interesting because there's certainly a subculture that loves him and probably will support that endeavor. We'll see. The Leech, Jiang Lee versus Tony Ferguson. There's a lot of like things to like say is looking up for Tony Ferguson. He's moving up a weight class, so his durability will probably be improved by being a less drained fighter. Documentedly, that helps. He's training with an actual gym, and as much as Jackson Wink is not the place to be anymore, it's still not terrible. It's better than running your own camp and kind of really doing what Tony's been doing. He looked way more comfortable. He looked way more rejuvenated against Michael Chandler until getting knocked out. But here's the thing. Ignoring for a moment his physical decline, which has definitely not been arrested. I mean, it might be slowing. It might be ways of making up for it. But like Tony's game realistically was always based on physicality, durability, creativity, flexibility, speed, power. And these are all things that are pretty much leaving him at this point. And even in his prime, this is something worth noting, is that most of the guys who you would think of as competent boxers that Tony Ferguson has fought have actually made him look pretty bad, even when he's won. There's the Michael Johnson fight way back in the day. There's even the Eve Edwards fight, which, considering Eve was on the downside of his career, was surprisingly competitive back in 2011. And then there's even fights like Josh Thompson. Admittedly, he looked very, very good at, and that is someone who I do think has decent boxing hands. But there's the Lando Venata fight. There is the Anthony Pettis and Donald Cerrone fights, who themselves were on the way down and gave him some trouble. And then, of course, the Gaethje, the Oliveira, the Dariush, and Chandler, the 4-fight losing streak that he's currently on. And the Leech has pretty good boxing, actually. Reasonably fast hands, throws with some power, throws with some variation, some creativity, and low kicks well, which is something Ferguson's also not historically been all that great at dealing with, to be honest. Somehow there's a 4.5 reach advantage for Ferguson. I don't think we're going to see that effectively. I think this is one of those cases where, well, I don't know, actually, because you would think that the Leech would be the thicker in the body. I don't know. Maybe he will just have a massive reach and he can get around the jab of the Leech that way. Maybe. I think he'll take the first round. I'm talking about Tony Ferguson. I think he'll take the first round of this fight because the Leech starts very, very slow, and he's kind of a momentum building fighter. I'm going to take a quick beverage here. So I could definitely see Ferguson having a impressive first round before the Leech starts to find the counters, find his rhythm, find his warm up phase, because he does come out cold a lot. But and I can definitely think of what a Ferguson win looks like, because the Leech has been finished in fantastic fashion before. The Chimaev fight is a good example of that, and if we go way back in the day, like Keita Nakamura, putting him down is another one. But I can't pick Tony Ferguson to win. I can't pick Tony Ferguson to win on one quality round in the last 4 fights. I can't. I've never even really liked the guy. Like, even dating back to the Ultimate Fighter days, and people always say, like, what happens in Ultimate Fighter shouldn't form your opinion because of various things, the editing process, the stress of the situation, and so on. And I have no doubt that, like, the villains of Tough historically are people who are not that bad on a day-to-day basis. They are not that guy or that girl. Said this, I think, about the Carla Esparza one. But there are moments of the Ultimate Fighter that, regardless of anything really, are things being said that you just shouldn't say. And Tony Ferguson is very, very high on that list in his fight with Charlie Rader in the house. And part of me wants to cheer for Ferguson. The part that really enjoys his weird ass, exciting, kill or be killed style, wants it to come back. But part of me is also just like, this guy's kind of a dick, and I like the Leech. And I might actually just enjoy the Leech taking him apart. Betting line is actually pretty closer than I thought it would be. Minus 265 on the Leech, plus 225 on Ferguson. Interesting. Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez. Let's handle the big part first here. Kevin Holland has a 7-inch reach in this fight, or reach advantage in this fight. Holy cow. 81-74. Wow. That's a thing. I don't think it's necessarily a thing he actually uses all that well, because, like, Kevin Holland likes to do the dash thing where he dashes into the pocket, gets his job done, goes back out. He'll use the reach in the meantime, like, to facilitate defense and so on. But, like, he's a little bit too aggressive to just kind of, like, lock Rodriguez out of the fight. Kind of loves flirting with danger. Kind of also, again, despite his own wrestling defensive shortcomings and his tendency to call anyone who tries to wrestle with him a pussy, he is bizarrely willing to clinch up and do some wrestling of his own. He has all the physical advantages here in a lot of ways. Like, I think he's probably the faster fighter. I think he's probably the more powerful fighter. I think, like I said, he's the way longer fighter. And D-Rod is used to being kind of the big guy in the fight. 6'1" welterweights are usually pretty large, usually pretty big, but you're dealing with a 6'3" guy with an 81-inch reach. So a lot of the standard advantages he has are gone. I wasn't super excited for Daniel Rodriguez when he came in, but he's been very good. Like, he has a quality boxing built game, comfortable in the pocket, good feet, good footwork. Actually, for MMA, stunningly good defense, throws in combination. And the thing, though, is, Kevin Holland, without wrestling him, hasn't really been a path to victory. And Rodriguez likes to stand and bang. So I'm going with Holland by decision. It wouldn't surprise me terribly if Rodriguez got the job done, because I do think that he is actually the more fundamentally sound boxer. I honestly do. It's just that I think that he's a guy that has struggled when not having the reach advantage in the past. For example, I do actually entirely think that he beat Nicholas Dalby. To be clear, I think he won that fight. But it has to be said, Dolby, who actually only has a 74.5-inch reach, but like because he's such a kicker, can attack from further away, had a lot of success just kind of hanging around on the outside and making Rodriguez come inside. And that is something Holland should be able to replicate at times when he's not being a nutter. Because his fighting style is a bit insane. It's a bit nuts. The betting odds seem to support this whole idea. Minus 215 on Kevin Holland, plus 180 on D-Rod. So that feels pretty accurate. Feels pretty much like where I'm going with that. Moving on down to Irene Aldana versus Macy Chiasson, who has a surprisingly small reach advantage considering she's 5'11". She's coming in with a 72-inch reach to the 68.5 of Irene Aldana. And I'm gonna be talking about reach a lot in this episode. A lot of reach comments because there's a lot of fights here that I think are really defined by the reach, because Aldana has never beaten a fighter with a longer reach than her in the UFC. She's beaten people with longer reaches, but it's Jessamyn Duke and Peggy Morgan. And Peggy Morgan, so slow on the feet, just lacking in so many physicality areas. And Jessamyn Duke, just bad. Just bad. Both as a pro wrestler and as an MMA fighter, I'll say that. Does that mean that there's nothing that Aldana is going to do that doesn't trouble Chiasson? No, not at all. Like, she's got a good counter game. Chiasson's there to get hit quite easily. But she does have that reach. She will use it sometimes. She will throw in high volume. She can do elements of what Leslie Smith did to Aldana, and she could do elements of what Holly Holm did to her, in the sense that what allowed those two ladies to beat Aldana is to a lesser extent in the game. Now, Smith's a way more comfortable brawler and seems to just hit harder than Chiasson. Chiasson doesn't seem to have fight-altering power at like any point, really. And she's not the physical force that Holm is in the clinch, but she can clinch. She can work at a high pace. She can brawl. This has a lot of similarities to the Norma Dumont fight, where I think she can probably work a very, very similar game plan. And it worked then, although it gave her a scary-ass third round. It could probably do it again here. I think she's going to get hit. I think she's going to get hit solidly at various points, but Chiasson is my underdog. At least last I looked at her, she's an underdog. She still is. Plus 170 to minus 200. That line is closing, though, from when I wrote this down before. I don't know why Chiasson went back down to 135, though. She seemed happy at 145. She got the win. She's probably looking at a title shot at 145 if she just stayed there. So I honestly have no idea why she's back at 135. I don't get it. But I have her winning by decision. Of course, it wouldn't surprise me if Aldana just knocks her flat, though, because Aldana does have a good counter game. And there's good power on those. Johnny Walker versus Ion Cutelaba. When these two guys came into the UFC, I was really hoping for something, because the raw physicality and the right tools are 100% there. In Cutelaba's case, it's a stunningly good cardio for a guy who is angry, so damn angry and so damn tense that it shouldn't really work. But strong, durable, actually had a reasonably put together game that was pretty functional. I'm like, all right, there's some bricks to build on here and go up. And in Johnny Walker's case, it was extreme lethality, where he knocks people out and does dynamic things and had, tremendous athletic ability, power, super long, super tall reach. What is his reach anyways? I didn't think it would really apply in this fight, so I didn't write it down. 82-inch reach. which actually for 6'6" is not that big. But 82-inch reach for the division, is 6'6", and presumably is going to, was presumably going to develop into something as well. For Cutelaba, he really has had no interest in actually improving or no ability to improve. He is the exact same fighter that came in. He's still full of rage, tremendous aggression without necessarily a tremendous amount of thought behind it, throws everything with mean intentions, will wrestle when he probably shouldn't, will strike when he probably shouldn't, will show a complete lack of actual decision making. And in Johnny Walker's case, I think he has made a concerted effort to improve. The problem is, his version of improvement was to go to SBG Ireland, which is not a place you should go to improve in general. And it just has really resulted in this like rather low output, heavy on the feints, kind of harmless style that I don't think actually has a way of winning fights. And it's why he's one win in his last 4, beating Ryan Spawn, a similarly disastrously shaped fighter, and losing to Nikita Krylov, who, to be honest, kind of similar, like kind of a better version of Ion Cutelaba, and losing to Thiago Santos in a terrible fight, and getting basically crushed by Johnny Walker and Corey Anderson. I'm picking Ion Cutelaba because despite the fact that he is not really getting any better and will probably be stuck at this level for a really, really long time, probably for the rest of his career, he knows what he is, and he knows what his recipe for victory is. And I have no faith that Johnny Walker has the same. I don't. And as much as losing to Ryan Spawn was a bit embarrassing, and losing in the fashion he did to Magomed Ankalaev and going to a draw with Dustin Jacoby is, all of those fighters actually have a pathway to victory, and Johnny Walker doesn't. It's kind of weird because, like, if we were in the prototype phase of Johnny Walker, the Johnny Walker that came into the UFC, I'd probably actually feel better about picking him. Don't get me wrong, I think there'd be a solid chance he would get knocked out or hurt, but at least there would be that lethality. At least there would be that dynamic punchers or, well, strikers chance. And it doesn't even feel like that's there anymore. So Cutelaba via first or second round TKO. Might be on the feet, might be on the ground. And yeah. Cutelaba is the favorite, minus 185 and plus 155 on Johnny Walker. Feels more or less correct. Hakeem Dawodu versus Julian Erosa. Is this the last main card one? No, this is the start of the prelims. Only a 5-fight main card. No 6-fight. I'm picking Dawodu. Erosa is super tall. Has this kind of like interesting grab bag of skills that fits together in a surprisingly effective manner. He's aggressive. Like I said, he's really long, and that often is a huge thing. But the thing is that beyond that reach, there's nothing defensive to him. He is incredibly hittable. He relies on kicks to extend his range, and Dawodu is actually really hard to kick. Like, he's evasive, he sets up to prevent kicks really well, and he punishes you when you come in with kicks. And Erosa's been hurt a couple times. Like, he's not an iron jaw. Like, I don't think his chin is the problem. I don't actually think his ability to take a punch is the key problem to his like various knockout losses. I've always said that I think his problem is that he's defensively cruddy. And if you're going to have that kind of defense, you need like a cast iron chin. You need something metallic. You need something granite to do it. Something above and beyond. And he doesn't. He has kind of a fine chin. And Dawodu, not a ton of power, and that's why I'm picking it to go the distance. But Dawodu's got that creativity. He's got the volume, the speed, the ability to vary his pace, to hit with it, the ability to again engage in a kicking war and generally speaking win. And as much as his ground game is still kind of a big old question mark, Erosa's not a great he's not a great shot wrestler. He's not a great takedown artist in general. Kind of clinches with people and kind of drags them down. And I think Dawodu is up to the battle there. He's also a bit Erosa's also a bit foot slow. And if you take away his kicks, I think he's going to have a really hard time. So Dawodu by decision. The only real concern I have with Dawodu is that, or is it Dawodu or Dawodu? I think it's Dawodu. Is that you can kind of just keep upping the difficulty, essentially, the pace. And sometimes he gets, it's not that he can't match you. He will match the pace, but he does seem uncomfortable when he does it. But it just feels like way better fighters have tried, like beating Julio Arce and Zubair Kuga, Mike Trezano. These all feel like they probably should prep this. And there's nothing of Mozar Evelev in Erosa. I think at this point we're very aware that Mozar is a special prospect, and the fact that he ran through Hakeem is not a negative, so to speak. It's a negative if I guess if you think of Dawodu as a massive champion in the making, but that's about it. Odds are pretty much where I'd expect them to be, minus 225 for Dawodu and plus 190 for Erosa. I think those should probably be closer just because of the physical discrepancies. Gelton Almeida is probably going to beat Anton Turkalj fairly easily. He's a minus 700 favored, plus 500 on Turkalj. This is Turkalj's debut. He's up a weight class for a catchweight fight. He, like, to be clear, like, he's undefeated and he looks kind of fun. He looks like he has some ability. I honestly think that, like, we're going to be talking about Turkalj as a, reasonably solid guy in the 205 division, only 26 years old. But unless you have something really, really stout to defend takedowns against Almeida, I think he's going to get you down. I think he's going to get your back. And that's what I'm predicting to happen. Almeida by rear naked choke. But, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. If Turkalj can surprise and do his thing, it'll be really interesting. I hate this fight. Jamie Pickett versus Dennis Tulin. Or Tialunin, I think is how it is. Tialunin's just not very good. And Jamie Pickett, while he has some actually fairly good skills and some good physicality for a division that kind of lacks it, middleweight, and good size, 6'2", and thickly built, he's my Fares Ziam, if you remember from last week's card where I was talking about Fares Ziam and how I have a hard time getting behind him, how I have a hard time picking him because he looks so uncomfortable. Looks like he hates every second of the fight. And Pickett's in that same boat where dude don't look like he's having fun. But Tialunin is just bad. I don't really know how you get signed by the UFC on a 10-5 record. Especially in Russia, where they're like masters of stat padding. Pickett probably can clinch with him, probably can control him, push him in the fence, maybe take him down a little bit, hang with him in space. Tialunin is not a good striker, but a dangerous striker. It's a bit weird. Like, when it comes down to it, he just kind of has, like, flashy stuff that he likes to do and knocks people out periodically, but it also backfires sometimes. So, like, I refuse to call him a good striker, but dangerous enough that we'll probably see a boatload of Wallenstall. But I am picking Pickett by decision. He is a minus 135 favorite. Tia Lunin coming in at 1 plus 115. I wouldn't make that any wider. Jake Collier versus Chris Barnett. I like Huggy Bear. He's a fun fighter. Will gift us with the occasional amazing knockout. Dances to the ring. But he also has, well, no height for the heavyweight weight class. He is also prone to gassing. Not necessarily the greatest defender against boxing in the world. And while Jake Collier is also a guy who realistically should not be at heavyweight because dude was down at middleweight at one point. He's got a monicum of size. He's got that, what the Bloody Elbow guys call dad energy. You know, he's at the barbecue. They always make it like heavyweights have to be like the guy manning the grill at the barbecue, at the family barbecue. That's be the dad. What I'm saying is that all Collier has to do, and he's pretty tough and durable, is survive some early storm moments, get his game going, work his reach, and TKO Chris Barnett in the second round, probably. Because actually, it's only a 3.5 inch reach advantage. I thought it would be more, but just kind of do what Ben Rothwell did, my man. There you go. Collier is the minus 350 favorite. Barnett plus 285. Wider than I expected, but like probably fitting. Probably the most interesting fight as far as title contention. Norma Dumont versus Danielle Wolf, and that's only because it's a women's featherweight fight, and women's featherweight is an absolute ghost town. Listening to some of the podcasts leading up into this, because I listen to a couple of podcasts before I do these, sniffing out narratives and stuff that's going on. It's kind of amazing how many people don't seem to know who Danielle Wolf is. Like, they're like, what is this 39-year-old 1-0 fighter doing in the UFC? And when you look at her MMA credentials, absolutely no idea. But we are talking about a 3-time U.S. national boxing champion, 3-sport college athlete. She's athletic. She's big. The division is devoid of anything. Her boxing career kind of stunted because she's in a weight class that, even in boxing, doesn't really exist, which was 154. She's down at 145 at MMA. Don't really know why she didn't try the PFL thing. Don't get me wrong. I think Kayla Harrison would, have her way with her. But it is still weird that she didn't try that. Came on Dana White's Contender Series instead, beat Tanisha Tennant in a fight that the second and third round were not great on for her. But she's 5'11", a legitimate athlete. I don't know if I'd consider her a prospect. She's got crisp striking. She's powerful. She's explosive. She's fast. She's a level of athlete and boxer that we do not see in MMA terribly often at women's MMA, and especially not at 145. She doesn't seem uncomfortable exchanging kicks, which is a really good sign. And she seems just really well prepared. Like, it does seem like Alliance MMA has her very schooled and ready for this kind of thing. I think her ceiling is hard capped because she's coming to a sport at the age of, 37, technically, when she made her first fight. And is now making her UFC debut at 39. And the UFC has matched her up here with Dumas, who is not a wrestler. Not really a grappler. Has okay defensive grappling, but not good offensive grappling, particularly. And actually, not for nothing, Wolf did catch Tennant in a guillotine on Dana White Contender Series and showed at least that there probably is something to her grappling game. And if you're picking Dumas because you think she's just going to wrestle her to the ground and do things to her, I would advise you to go check out the Andreas Michailidis versus Alex Pereira fight, because that was basically that. And Michailidis just gassed himself out. My main question, though, is that Wolf did crumble under sustained pressure from Tenet on the Contender Series, and she did fade. And maybe that's a one-off, but I have to see her fight someone. I have to see her win convincingly before I can believe that it starts to happen convincingly against the absolute best in the division. And I haven't seen that. So that's why I'm taking Dumas to win a decision. But it has to be said, I think Dumas' style is something she's going to have to break out of in this fight. Because if she just kind of dashes into the pocket, exchanges punches, backs off, she's not really going to test Wolf in any of the ways that we have questions about her. I want to see some pressure from Dumas. I want to see her do something. Like, a part of me really wants to pick Wolf, but the bigger part of me just can't. And Dumas is a pretty big favorite here. Minus 325 to plus 260. Moving on to Chad and Helliger and Haile Alatang. I like Chad and Helliger. I do. I mean, one, he's a Canadian, even if he's from Alberta. You know, there's a little national pride there. And two, I always like guys who have a really well put together game. He's light on his feet, opportunistic counter striker, pours the pace on when needs to, has a good gas tank, will snatch submissions pretty nicely actually from bottom, but isn't determined to it. Like, you know, he's a guy who will give up on a submission if it's not there. He will look to sweep, to stand up. He has kind of all the right grappling instincts. It's just, I also feel like he's just an okay athlete. Just okay. Not that strong, not that powerful, not that fast. And Haile Alatang, despite having a worse game, if we're being honest, he's got that physicality. He's got that scary, fight-changing, flash physicality. And it's kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big deal. Picking Alatang by decision here. The odds are on his side, minus 165 to plus 140. I'm not 100% sold on Alatang yet. And, you know, some of that is I look at a 5-8-2 record and I'm like, or a 15-8-2 record and I'm like, but then again, China, MMA in China is going to produce losses. It's structured that way. It is really a iron sharpens iron regional system. And that really accounts for a lot of Alatang's losses. But I do have to go with him here, even if it just comes down to, like, I think he has the horsepower to be a contender in this division, maybe, and I just don't think Ann Helliger does. And Helliger is the kind of guy that, like, if he was bigger, I probably think he would go further. Like, because at like middleweight or even welterweight, I think a lot of things would work for him. But, like, bantamweight is a shark tank. And that's just the unfortunate reality of that. Elise Reed versus Melissa Martinez. I am not sold on Melissa Martinez. Like, there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot of, like, athletic upside. A lot of flash. Let's be honest, a little bit of sex appeal, which always goes a long way with the UFC brass. I don't know, but there's some things I need to see. Like, her fight with Desiree Yanez going to split decision, I think, was kind of a bit of a problem. And, like, her record otherwise is very can openerish. 3-2, 3-2, 0-1, 3-2, 3-2, 0-0. Really likes fighting people that are 3-2. That being said, I was not a believer of Elise Reed when she signed with the UFC. I briefly got on the bandwagon after she looked good against Corey McKenna, but I think that had a lot more to do with McKenna having to find herself and be a fight to her body type, I guess, in a nutshell. And then she kind of got schooled by Sam Hughes. So I am going with Melissa Martinez, probably to win a decision, but a stoppage is not out of the question. Martinez is a minus 165 favorite to plus 135 for Reed. So it looks like I am far from alone on that. And then Darian Weeks versus Johan Leones. Going with Johan. He's underdog here, surprisingly enough, plus 110 to minus 135. These two guys have a similar journey in the sense that they both made their way through the regional scenes being like reasonably good athletic guys. Like being guys who out horsepowered the opponent, did their thing, and in Weeks' case, that was speed and coordination and variety. And in Johan's case, it was raw, I'm going to take your head off power. The thing is I think as much as I don't really think Johan's going to go like a super, super long distance in the UFC, like, to be honest. I just think I just think there are too many gaps in his game. His power is actually fight changing. And Weeks, I don't think there's anything fight changing about him. I think like he's a quadruple A fighter in the sense that like he'll rip it up on the regional scene, he'll do his thing, and then he'll get to the UFC and kind of just realize that like he's not actually that great of an athlete. Like his game is reasonably well built. It's not a air quote cheater game that sometimes comes through the MMA sphere where it's just like this would not work in any way if you were not the athlete you are. But there's just a comfort level that he has that like I'm going to be faster. And when you take that away from him, he really has a hard time. I think he will be marginally faster in this fight, but I think Johan's going to test that chin and make him kind of just shell up a little bit and like not be as persistent as he needs to be, not be as high output as he needs to be, not be as tuned into the fight as he needs to be, and Johan will probably take a decision. So that's my pick. And also Johan continuing the reach thing, 4 inches of reach advantage, which is pretty nuts. And that's the fight card. Again, it's not that this card is bad in terms of fight quality. Rodriguez and Holland is a fight that I'm amped for. I'm hyped. I'm psyched. Walker versus Cutelaba could be all kinds of stupid fun. Tony Ferguson might go out there and show us some flashes of the old times. And Collier versus Barnett, until they perhaps gas, will be pretty fun as well. And maybe we see a massive development from Danielle Wolf. Or maybe a Melissa Martinez. But there feels like there's no stakes. It doesn't feel like a pay-per-view. If you gave me this as a fight night on the ESPN app, there'd be no complaints. There'd be no complaints. But you've attached a price tag to it. And I don't know what on that main card I can really recommend outside of Holland versus Rodriguez. Anyways, as per usual, the links are down below to the Discord, YouTube, Acast, Anchor, Spotify. The link tree has everything you could possibly want in terms of me, and also a link to Twitter. I will also, like I said, include a link to the UFC 278 payroll stuff if you're interested and want to take a look at that. So that is all. I will see you guys after the fights.